Want to make a quick announcement before we get started. Welcome to Alli and Rashad and Nicole for being here. Thank you for everyone else who's joining this session. As people come in, feel free to come in. A quick reminder that if folks can turn off their audio when they're not speaking, it'll cut down on background noise. If you feel like your background is distracting, if you're walking or in a moving vehicle, just turn your video off. But I'm hoping this is a session where folks can participate and ask questions. Feel free to type them in the chat. And Nicole, Rashad, Alli, if you guys are not able to see the questions, I'll interject to make sure that we get enough questions answered. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to type it in the chat or use the reactions to raise your hand. Okay. I want to thank American Reading Company for sponsoring this workshop, and also a reminder that we are going to be having a virtual book fair afterward, and that will start at 12, so we can roll right from this event into the virtual fair. And check out the links in the chat for more information. Okay, I'll let you guys do your thing now.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. I am Rashad Davis. It's going to be me, myself, Nicole Major, publisher, and author, and Alli Harper of OurShelves as well, providing diverse books. So we wanted to get things rolling by being interactive with you all. So if you could respond in the chat, that'll be perfect. So the first question that we want to ask you all, I'm gonna have to check my notes here, is when was the first time you saw yourself reflected in a children's book? So what we mean by that is, when was the first time that you saw yourself ethnically, racially, however you define that, reflected in a children's book? And then the second question that we have is, what age do you think we first start to see race, and at what age do we start to develop bias? So if you all could put your answers in the chat. I think Nicole wanted to address the first question, and so we can kind of go from there. So as you all are answering, I think Nicole wanted to address that first question.
Sure, absolutely, Rashad. Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me. For me, I was talking to Rashad about this morning. I'm Generation X. I'm 46 years old. I have no problem saying my age. As some women do, I have no problem with that. But you know, being Generation X, I really didn't see a great representation of children who looked like me in books growing up. Just didn't see it. Wasn't there. I loved Dr. Seuss. You know, as far as programming, I loved Mr. Rogers. He was my hero. But I mean, as far as being able to go out there and see my normal life represented in a children's book, it just wasn't there. It just wasn't really available. So I think now being able to see that, I'm a member of African American Children's Books on Facebook. And it's just like every single day, I'm seeing all these diverse books coming out there, showing not only certain Black experiences, but showing that we have the same experiences as everyone else. You know, it was great to see Hair Love win an Oscar last year, you know, for that 7-minute short, you know. So I think it's very important for us to be able to see ourselves as children. I'm going to segue right into that next question and just answer that if you don't mind. I think we begin to see and start having racial bias very, very early on. I know as a child, I went to a predominantly Caucasian school, and actually throughout my childhood I did. And it's just automatically, I just thought that white was better, you know. It wasn't anything anybody said to me. It wasn't like, oh, Nicole, you know, you're worse because you're Black. I loved my family. I was fine with the way that I looked. But at the same time, that there was a little thing kind of ticking in my head that showed that the white experience was the normal. So I think that happens very early on for kids.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback along with that. So with the first question, I'm 29. So, you know, media when I was growing up, first of all, being both Black and gay having those simultaneous experiences reflected back in my media was basically non-existent. The few Black characters who I saw were caricatures, and you know, the few gay people that I saw in media, again, were caricatures. It wasn't really reflecting the reality of who I felt I was. And so, you know, I was talking again with Nicole about this. Most of the media that I consumed were anime. It was anime. And I didn't really start drawing Black characters until I was in high school. And I really started to develop a consciousness around, you know, race and what it meant to be Black and gay in America. So it was at that point that I started to draw characters who looked like me, because the people that I was consuming as far as media goes were not my family. It was not what I saw in my everyday life. And I agree. I think that the bias and the understanding of race starts early. I'll never forget the first time I was called out for being Black. I was talking with somebody in like elementary school, and he was Puerto Rican. And, you know, we were having a casual conversation. He goes, "You Black boy?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess I am Black." It was the first time that I had really been addressed that way. I mean, I knew that I was, but it was never an issue because I was surrounded by Black people. We never talked about, you know, it was never made to feel weird. And at that point, I started to feel weird about it. So yeah, it's an interesting experience for sure. And I'm glad to be able to do this work, putting those stories back to life.
Yes.
So, Alli, I wanted to ask, because you actually have the right answer for the bias question. I wanted to see if you could address that. Oh, you're muted.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alli. So yeah, I was just gonna say, as a white little girl, I saw myself represented a lot in terms of my whiteness, in terms of my queer identity. I don't think I saw my queer identity until I was in my 30s and had my kid. So I echo, somebody also said that on here similarly. And you all, so it's interesting, someone on the OurShelves curation team is the founder of an entity called the Diverse Bookfinder. And she, I'm kind of taking this from her, so I want to give her credit. Dr. Krista Aronson, who's the founder of that effort. I saw her speak in a workshop, and she asked everyone, at what age do you think kids start seeing race? And people were saying like 3, 4, 8, 9. It's actually at 6 months. I'm going to put the link in the chat. Because actually, even the American Academy of Pediatrics, has spoken to this. So at 6 months, kids are seeing race, but kids are actually showing internalized bias between the ages of 2 and 4. And from the chat, it seems like everyone in this group really knows that. But it was always striking to me when Krista asked this, and it was a conference of teachers and people in the kids book world, some publishers, authors, illustrators. And when she asked, at what age do people see, or are kids showing internalized bias, people were really talking about like elementary age, like 3rd grade, 4th grade. So it's really cool to hear everybody in this group, really knowing that this starts so young, in really pre-verbal ways. And then kids, I find from my experience, it's interesting, like we had a kid in my kids' preschool who was called The Color of Poop. Like it happens. They don't know yet. They're not silenced about it yet. Like I feel like in early elementary grades, kids start to realize they're not supposed to talk about race. If kind of like our generation was kind of brought up to be pretty silent, at least let's say in the white families. And so it's like these young ages where kids are saying things. It's actually an opportunity to really dig in and talk about this in age appropriate ways before we really just want to avoid sending the message that we can't talk about it. So awesome that everyone in this group is so on it, that this happens so early. Because I was shocked in that workshop. Everyone was like 3rd grade, 4th grade, and you were like, oh my gosh, wow. So awesome.
Perfect. So I know that we wanted to give you all just basically information about ourselves and who we are and how we got into writing and illustrating, publishing, curating books for children, which is incredible. So I think we wanted to start with Alli, right? With you starting with your journey.
Sure. So again, hello everyone. My name is Alli Harper, and I'm the owner of OurShelves, which is a queer and other diverse kids book subscription service and advocacy effort. I wanted to actually ask you if you'd be willing in the chat to just share a little bit in terms of what you're looking for in queer and other diverse kids books. It could be certain identities of characters, it could be certain family types, it could be types of stories, and don't feel any pressure that, oh, they might exist and you haven't found them. You know, it could be that you're just interested and you haven't had time to look, but whatever it is you're looking for, it would be really awesome to hear from you in the chat. And I'll just share, I'm sure like some of you here, my wife and I have a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old. And we were just really surprised when we had our 7-year-old. Maybe we shouldn't have been surprised. I mean, my background was in civil rights lawyering and organizing, so I shouldn't have been surprised. But I was surprised at how few high quality, age appropriate kids books I could find that reflected my kids' 2-mom family, but also just many other different kinds of kids and families to kind of cultivate our values. And I think I was surprised because I also knew there was this tremendous audience for these books. It wasn't like everyone I was talking to wanted these books. Obviously, we self-select our circles, so there was that. But what started as an intuition that there was a significant audience, we've now done the research, and I mean, more than half the babies in this country are babies of color, right? I mean, there's like 12 million millennial moms who support queer families. I mean, it's just, it's millions and millions, and we've done the research, and it's clear. So I thought I would share when we, and actually the other thing that would be great, thank you, I'm starting to see these responses come in the chat, is if you would just put in also how old your kids are, that would also be informative too as we start to dig into this, and we'll dig more in the Q&A. But I wanted to share again, I have a 7- and 2-year-old, and so for the last kind of 7 years, I've been really trying to understand, like, why can't I find enough of the books that I want? And so I wanted to share here today really 2 problems that I think explain why I can't find those books and many of us can't find the books that we're looking for, and then how OurShelves is a response to that. So here is what I think are the 2 problems. Not rocket science, many of us can relate to this. The first problem is it's a content problem. There just aren't enough books with queer families, and I'm gonna limit my scope to queer families. There are not enough books with queer characters and queer families, period. That's the first part. The second part is queer families are incredibly diverse. So if we don't have enough books with queer kids and families, how are we possibly gonna scratch the surface of how diverse our families are? So that's the second content problem. And the third content problem is Nicole made reference, I can't remember the exact language you used, Nicole, but of kind of like normal books where you just see yourself being a kid. In terms of queer content, we need more queer, I want to be clear, we need more queer content across the board in every type of book, including books where the storyline is about our identity, stories that involve bullying and homophobia and overcoming that. We need more of those books. And it is also important to say that it is even harder to find books where we're just going to the beach or we're just avoiding bedtime like my kids do every single night, right? I mean, so we need those books too. So that's the third piece of the content problem. So that's the content problem. There's just not enough books. The second part of the problem is what I call an accessibility problem or a hard to find problem. So there are some of these books that exist, but often they're too hard to find. So why is that? So we can talk more about this in the Q&A if folks are interested, but just to give a few highlights. So major American publishers who have the most distribution and communications resources and infrastructures to get their books to reach the largest amount of people, they're just not creating enough of these books right now. They're not creating these books in the numbers that are needed and wanted. So it's the great work of smaller publishers, foreign publishers who are creating these books. And they just they cannot have the distribution and communications infrastructures to ensure that their books can get to everybody who wants those books. So that's an accessibility problem. So I'm gonna show an example here. So I'm just curious, has anyone on this call ever, and not if you're an OurShelves member, not fair to answer, but is anyone who's not an OurShelves member heard of this book? So this is a book. It's by a foreign press. It's by a small press. It's the main character here is not given a gender, so you can play with gender with this book. The main character has two grandpas. They can be read as multiracial. So the third aspect of the accessibility problem is brought out. This is an example of this because, so this storyline I will also say it's a high quality book in terms of text and illustration. This book, the storyline is not about gender. It's not about having two gay grandpas. That's present and visible, but it's not, the storyline isn't about that. And the tags that are associated with this book, which are really important because that's how librarians and booksellers and people looking for books find books, the tags have no mention of LGBTQ. So what's interesting is books that the storyline is not about the LGBTQ identity often are not tagged as LGBTQ, which means that, and this is significant, because it means A, these books are not making it to your homes, your schools, your libraries. So that's a problem, right? We know how important diverse kids books are, and we can talk more about that if we want to in the Q&A, why they're important. But I think everyone on this call, because you're here, you know that. But the second piece from a systems perspective is when this book doesn't sell, when it underperforms in sales only because people don't know about it, what message does that send to publishers, right? It tells publishers this book is risky to create. Like I might produce a few of these because I think it's the right thing to do, but I know it's risky and I'm not doing it. Whereas we need to completely transform publishers' perception of these books because there is enormous opportunity and we have the data to prove it. So quick, let me just wrap up by telling you, or by sharing that OurShelves, we have a dual mission in response to these two problems. So the first problem in terms of books being hard to find, we have a curation team that is majority queer, majority people of color, that brings expertise, librarian, teacher, early childhood development, psychology of racial bias. You can see them on our website at ourshelves.com. But that curation team is finding these books that can be hard to find and connecting them to the busy parents, families, teachers, librarians seeking them. So that's the connection, solving that some that exist, but they can be hard to find. So we're making sure they get to people. But the second thing is going back to this problem of there just aren't enough of these books, is that's why we have to have a second part of our mission, which is the advocacy piece, which is we have to advocate for more of the queer and other diverse kids books still needed. And we do that both by constantly communicating with publishers about what's still needed. So for example, I saw someone, oh, it might have moved. So we talked about single parents, blended families, and I saw foster care. So those are all things that we're constantly talking to publishers to say, these books don't exist, or if they do, there's just a few and we need more varied representation. So that advocacy and communication with publishers, but also we feel like we have to prove, our theory of change here is that when we advocate and say we need more books that have queer parent-led foster families or queer parent-led adopted families, whatever it is, that we're not just asking for more of these books, but we're there to buy the books in significant numbers. So again, we're moving them from the perception of these are risky to create to no, we should be proposing more of these books because we don't just want a trickle of these books each year, which is where we currently are. We need an abundant outpouring of books that reflects the demographics and population and audience of this country and all of those people's allies. So that's a bit about how we started OurShelves. I'm happy to answer any other questions in the Q&A, but thank you to Philadelphia Family Pride for including me and to Rashad and Nicole for being so inspiring and fun in this process.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Alli. I feel like I just went to school. I love it. That was amazing. So Nicole, would you mind sharing a bit about your journey and how you got into publishing and writing?
Absolutely. First of all, I'd like to say, Alli, wow, what an incredible explanation of how the publishing process works, what those big publishers are looking for. They want to make a profit. So if they feel that something is profitable, they're going to go to that every single time. So you're right, the advocacy part of it is very, very important when it comes to publishing. Getting out there, making your voices heard, saying, this is what we want. So the more that you say that, the larger audience is going to be, the larger those publishers are going to be able to see that there is a large audience out there who's like vying for these books. Please get them out here. So starting with my process, I've loved to write. I remember when I was 12 years old, I'm a Christian and I grew up in a very Christian household. The very first thing that I wrote as a 12-year-old that I showed to my mom was a tract, because they were passing out Christian tracts. I don't know if you guys even know what that is, but that's what I wrote. And my mom said, wow, you really have you're really good at this. And I was like, yeah, and I really enjoy writing. I remember telling my uncle, I think I was about 17 or 18 years old. I said, I want to just write books. I want to be a romance novelist, and, you know, telling him all these books I wanted to write. And he was like, well, you've got to get a job. So you might want to go to school for something that will pay the bills. And then you can write whatever you want. So I said, well, you know what? I'm going to go to school for journalism, because I'll be able to write. I'll write for newspapers. And that's exactly what I did. I went to school for journalism, and was able to write for many newspapers and magazines for the last 20 plus years. And it's been great. I've freelanced, I've written full time for daily newspapers and weekly newspapers. And it's been a blessing. But I also wanted to, that burning desire to write and create has always been there. And whenever I had my daughters, I realized that still there were no books out there much that represented the princesses. You know, here are my little princesses, and I wanted them to be able to see princesses who looked like them. So I wrote a book called Amina, Princess of Zaria, and I self-published it. And, you know, I'm just remembering back to that time. That was several years ago. I went to Barnes & Noble, and we lived in Charlotte at that time. I went to Barnes & Noble in the Arboretum area. If anybody's Charlotte, hello. I'm not in Charlotte now, but if you are from there, I went to Barnes & Noble and spoke with the manager, and she was Caucasian. And I said, hey, I've got this princess book, and it's coming out, and it's a Black princess, and I'd like to have my first book signing here. And, you know, she was just like, her eyes just popped open so big, and she was just like, oh my gosh, we've been waiting for you. You know, and I was just like, really? Great, yay. You know, and so I had my first book signing there at that Barnes & Noble, and it was great to be able to see, you know, the kids came and we sat in a circle and I read the book, and it was great to be able to look over at my little girls and for them to have that experience. It was priceless. It was one of those priceless moments. The book didn't go very far. I didn't push it very hard. I wasn't happy with what I created. And this speaks to what Alli is talking about. You know, you've got to have something that's a good quality. You're putting out there something that people are going to want to read and that can touch the masses. You know what I'm saying? So I rewrote the book years later. It's called Amina's Wall. And it was so great. I had my first book signing for Amina's Wall last year. And I was in Trenton, New Jersey, had the signing at a local library, and it was amazing to see how many families came out, how many people came out. There were at least 100 people at the signing, and these are the things that they were saying. Oh my gosh, this is wonderful. This is what our kids need. And actually a teacher, a former teacher was there who had retired, and she took my book to the school system, the Trenton Community School Board, and they approved the book to go into all of the Trenton libraries for elementary schools. Yeah, that was a big deal. They did I'm trying to remember what it was, a resolution, sorry, about to say referendum. They did a resolution on it, and so now that book is in all of the Trenton elementary school libraries. So these are things that can happen and continuously happen every single day for authors out there. I'm so thankful because now I have a small publishing company. It's called, well, I'm calling it small, but this year alone, I had an outpouring of people who were like, oh my gosh, I have something to say, you know, and it's amazing. By the end of this year, I will have published 14 books. And to me, I'm like, that's a really big deal. These words are getting out there. Everything from children's books and some, you know, adult books as well. But these children's books, I have this father, and he's like, you know, African-American father. And he's like, I really want to show what it's like being an African-American dad and how much I love my daughter and, you know, our family being together. And this is just not represented out there enough. I'm not saying that it's not represented, but it's not represented enough. And so for him to be able to put that out there into the world, for people to be able to pick up, buy, and see is very, very important. I have a young man, an African-American young man who's doing a manga, and it's amazing. so many different diverse authors, and I'm open to everybody. I mean, of course, obviously, but it's just so great to be able to put these authors out there, to be able to show their voice and make a difference in the world, and have that material out there for people to be able to grab up and say, wow, I see myself, or I see my children, or I see somebody I know represented. That is really, really important. So that's how my journey started, and it is continuing. And I really like just dedicate this to God for me, because to me, it is a mission. I feel like what I'm doing every day is a mission, and I'm elated. I'm excited to be able to do that. Thanks.
Yay! Amazing. Your story about how you got into publishing and how you've not only created opportunities for yourself, but for other people is incredible. So thank you for sharing your journey. So I suppose I'll go last. Oh, is that my alarm? Somebody else's alarm. Okay. Give me 1 second. My alarm is going off. Okay, it stopped. It stopped. Good. Oh, sorry about that. Zoom things. But anyway, so I am Rashad Davis. I'm an author and an illustrator. And I really got my start when I was young. I loved writing and illustrating since I was little, but it wasn't something that I took seriously until college. I had a friend who got me into to be the first African-American to host an exhibit in a space at Tufts University in this particular space. And so from there, a professor reached out to me. She said, I love your work. Would you mind illustrating the cover of my book? And I said, I can get paid to draw pictures? Who knew? And so from there, I really relished the opportunity, and I decided to kind of leap kind of blind into the idea of being a freelance illustrator and a creator. I did one of those manifested, fake it till you make it, and put on my Facebook profile. I said, hey, I'm a freelance illustrator. I'm looking for work. I then got my first opportunity to illustrate a children's book, a full children's book for someone. And then it ended up becoming a #1 bestseller on Amazon. And I was like, whoa, okay, like this is something that is doable. So I decided to take another leap, went back to grad school for animation, and decided to put the degree on hold and pursue entrepreneurship as an artist. So at that time, I was going through a really tough time, and I also was really witnessing the violence against Black bodies. And so I wanted to create a book series that allowed Black children, children of color, children generally, to feel safe to explore their world and feel safe to be themselves as they were. And thus came my children's book series called Carefree Like Me. So the book series, so the book series deals generally with the themes of empathy, emotional literacy, and culture. So it's two best friends who travel into the spirit world by accident, and they're stuck there until they can heal the emotions of these different hero characters. So each character that they meet represents a different ancient civilization. I studied anthropology, so I'm obsessed. And they also help them unlock the blockages that they're facing in regards to an emotional block. So, you know, the book series has gone on to win the Best Indie Book Award in 2017, and then the Best Indie Illustrator Award in 2019. And since then, I've continued my work and am now working on an LGBT-themed graphic novel, and just got picked up by a literary agent. So, you know, I'm really excited and really, really hyped just to share stories that are important to me, but not just important to me, but really represent the world and show the beauty of not just Black culture, but also LGBT identity, what it means to be queer, what it means to live at the intersections of multiple identities, and really embrace that beauty. So that's a bit about me. And yeah, so I think at this point we're open to the Q&A, right? Cool. So at this point, do we have everybody hop on video to share, or do we just have them type it into the chat? Because it looks like a small enough room.
If folks are able to turn on their videos and feel comfortable having their videos on, a reminder, this session is being recorded. It would be great for you to turn on your videos for us to have a conversation. You're welcome to add things in the chat.
Hey, Tiffany.
It's a little loud out here because we're at the park, so I apologize, but I've been listening. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Oh, and I wanted to ask everyone as well, is anybody interested in writing, illustrating a career and what that entails? I would love to answer any questions about that as well. Hey, Gwendolyn.
I would love to hear about that. I would love to hear what that entails.
Sure. So, Mark said I'd love to hear about the process. So I think you and I can handle that, Nicole. So I'm approaching things from the self-publishing, the publishing side. So as far as the illustration goes, what happens typically is that I'll get contacted by a client or somebody who's interested in working with me, and they'll give me a general scope of what they're looking for. And I'll say, okay, well, give me some time. I'll come up with character designs. I'll come up with initial concepts for you to play with and see what works with your story. And this is always the most fun part for me because I get to see people kind of like light up when their story starts to actually form into something visually. So from there, what happens is once we come up with a contract and we agree on a certain timeline for the work to be done, I'll create initial sketches. From there, I'll ink the artwork in. And actually, let me see if I can share some of my work as well. So from there, I ink the work in, which is basically creating clean lines using ink, or since I work digitally, I will use a more refined pen on the digital software. And then from there, I'll add color. And then from there, we go ahead and put text into the book. And typically a publisher will do that. They'll have a team of graphic designers to do that. And then from there, that's how we kind of complete the book. So that's really the process for my writing. And self-publishing in particular, it really depends on what you're looking for, but self-publishing allows you more creative control than if you were to go to a traditional publisher, because they'll want to tweak things to make sure that it works in line with their vision as well. But self-publishing and traditional publishing are both great avenues to pursue. And from there, I'll pass it on to Nicole since she has the real publishing experience.
Thank you, Rashad. So basically, as far as the publishing process goes, I mean, there are different ways that you can, or different avenues that you can walk down to achieve what you're looking for. As Rashad said earlier, he's working with an agent now, so he's going to have some things that are traditionally published very soon. And then also he's gone down the route of self-publishing or indie publishing. And that's what I do. So basically I do have a team of people that I work with, a team of contractors that work with me. And so we take your manuscripts and we'll talk about what it is you see and what you're looking to do. And we'll take it from there, from manuscript all the way to published book. And that's whether it's a children's book or a children's picture book. I have artists that I work with, and so we'll try to hone and find the right artist to work with you and get your book published. So I take you from start to completed published book. And I'm an indie publisher. Basically, anybody who's not one of those big Random House, Simon & Schuster is pretty much an indie publisher, or, you know, they're small presses out there that are really fantastic. There's some great small presses out there that are really doing a fantastic job. So I'm proud to be able to say that I'm a small press because I'm able to get those voices out there. And it's not necessarily because I had somebody tell me, it's like, yeah, the big publishers, you know, they'll take your stuff and you won't even hear from them, or you'll get this one page. You've got to think about what they're getting. A lot of times they'll say, you've got to send us exactly what we're looking for, else it's going in the trash, because they're getting thousands every month of, you know, thousands and thousands of submissions. And so they're looking for that one that can you follow the directions? Okay, you can follow the directions, you know, great. And so they don't have time to wade through, you know,
It looks like Nicole has frozen temporarily.
So I'm not sure if she's still there, but I can piggyback. Oh, there she is.
There might have been a lag. I'm sorry.
No,
That's fine.
It's okay.
Hop back in.
Did you want to finish your thought? Because there was a point when which you were speaking, and then it just kind of froze up a little bit.
Oh, did it freeze? Where did it freeze at? I don't even know where it froze.
I'm forgetting the exact spot.
Okay. Well, basically, I'll just say this again. So those larger publishers out there, it's not that they can't, it's not that they don't want to publish you. It's definitely they're getting submissions in all the time, tons and tons of submissions. And so they're looking for a particular thing, something that's going to be publishable. Can you follow directions? So a lot of times people get frustrated with the larger publishers. But whenever you're coming with somebody like me, I'm able to say, okay, I can sit with you. We can hone, we can work on your material, and we can get it to where it's publishable and you're able to get your voice out there. I am done. Am I still?
No, you're not frozen. You're good.
Okay. Okay.
I did want to piggyback on that part as well. So something that I found working with traditional publishers is that they typically won't accept unagented submissions. So typically they're going to look for you to have an agent before you reach out to them, because I think it's partly that they want to know that an agent considers your work strong enough to submit, but also they want to know that they'll be able to recoup their losses financially. Because, you know, working with an agency, they have somebody to hold accountable just in case something falls through the cracks or whatever. And, you know, it was fortunate. I was fortunate. Jen Cohen is in the chat. Hey, Jen. She is my PR person and all around awesome person. But, you know, I connected with Penguin Books because of one of her connections. I connected with somebody who worked at Penguin, and she connected me with the art director at Penguin, and, you know, she liked my work. So sometimes you kind of slide in through the side like that. But any way that you can reach out to somebody, you know, take the opportunity and take that connection.
And I want to say something about you sliding in through the side, if I can.
Yeah.
You didn't really slide in the side, because what you did was you produced a high quality self-published or a high quality indie book. And so they were able to take that and say, oh my gosh, this is making sales. People like this. Look at the work, the quality is there. So sliding in through the side, yes. And that's something that's of note to mention. I know many people who have started out with a self-published book that was done to a certain quality level to where it took, you know, big publishers took note, and they said, wow, if they're doing this well, if they can produce something of this quality on their own, what could they do for us? So that's something to take note of too. Anybody who's interested in publishing and you know you've got something out there that's that you feel that you can turn into a high quality product, you should definitely consider the self-publishing option, because you never know where that's going to lead you, where that's going to take you.
And you retain all the sales, all the money from your sales. So that part is nice too.
That's the great part.
There's a question in the chat. Are there particular things that people can do to show publishers that we are interested in, or that there's demand for different kinds of children's and young adult books other than buying them?
So this is Alli. I can speak a little bit to that. I have been really struck by, particularly when it comes to the major American publishers and even some of the more independent ones. I mean, I don't want to use the word insular, but like I had meetings with people when I was first starting this process, and I'd say, did you know that there is like no everyday book with like a main character with two moms by a major American publisher? And they'd be like, of course there must be. And I was like, no, really, like literally there are none. And so I say that just to say that I find the world's more separate than I would have guessed, like the advocacy. So I think getting involved in advocacy efforts, which we're trying at OurShelves, like to sort out like the advocacy. My background's in, again, social justice lawyering and organizing. So the advocacy piece is so important here and how we're strategic in doing that. So it's something that OurShelves is thinking a lot about, because I think it was hard for me in the beginning. I just felt everyone I was talking to was like, where are these books? We can't find them. I went to the gayest neighborhoods of San Francisco and I asked, what kids' books do you have? And they all had Mommy, Mama, and Me and Tango Makes Three. They all had the older books. And there's nothing wrong with those books. They're great. But none of them had heard of any of the books by the smaller foreign presses. And they weren't selling them. And if that's the gayest neighborhoods in San Francisco, then I don't know who knows about these books. So it's, so I think I don't have a great answer to your question. I think we have to advocate. We have to share our stories. And that's part of like OurShelves. We're trying to figure out, we do a lot of surveys and we're thinking through about how to collect stories, how to use social media to get people sharing what they want. Because when you talk to everyday parents, teachers, and librarians, they really all tell it's a pattern of a story. We want more everyday books. I mean, they get the importance. We all get the importance of all kinds of books, but they're like, I need a bedtime story for my kid, you know? And but you go to talk to publishers and literally I talked to the leading New York publisher on diverse kids books and had this conversation early on in this journey. And I said this, you know, it'd be great to just have like an everyday book like this. And literally the senior editor at that publisher said to me, well, I don't understand. What would the book be about then? And I was like, anything. It could literally be anything. It could be sharing. It could be avoiding bedtime. It could be splashing in a bathtub, whatever's age appropriate, whatever's interesting. But this was the leading diversity. And again, I love this publisher. They've done a lot of great things. But that's like that's a good mark for like, we need to really do a lot of communication and advocacy to just convey that this is what everyday people want. It does not exist. If it does exist, it's too hard to find, and we need to make these stories. So it's not a great answer. We just need to do a lot more, and we need to do it together and collectively and strategically. And I think OurShelves, like I've never been a business person. I'm more the advocacy person, but the book box subscription is a tool, is an advocacy tool, because it's a way to organize, improve the market demand for these books. So yeah, I mean, I think I would love at info@ourshelves.com if you were willing to share your story. I mean, I collect a lot of people's stories and we're trying to figure out a strategic way to share them. But I think sharing your story of why it matters, what it felt like I have video footage of people talking about the first time they saw, you know, people tearing up, remembering the first time they saw themselves in a book. I mean, anything you can share that is just human and compelling. I do believe that stories strategically deployed in collective action are the ways that systems change. So I think if you're willing to share your personal story, you know other people who are, definitely send them along to me at info@ourshelves.com. And I'd love for you to be part of the conversation with me about how we just strategically amplify all the voices of everyday people. Like I'm in all these kid lit groups and you just don't hear everyday people. There's a lot from publishers, but you just don't hear of and so I think we just have to get our voices in this conversation with power, which comes from our collective unity. And can I just mention too, I wanted to mention, because unfortunately I have to, if people have questions for me, I'm going to be in the sponsors book fair. But I wanted to mention this book because a couple people mentioned foster families. It is extremely hard to find representation with foster families. We included this book in our fall book box. I don't know if you can see it. A Family is a Family is a Family. Each year there tends to be like a book about all different kinds of families that come out. Some are better than others for a variety of reasons that we can go into in a different conversation. But we included this book because the kind of central character in this book is actually a kid in a foster family, which is just rare. So it goes through, there's 2 mom families, there's 2 dad families, there's multiracial families, families of different racial identities, families of different sizes, blended families. It's just extremely rare. Again, we just need a lot more advocacy. But if you're looking for a book that actually names a foster family, again, it is a bit more, it is obviously about teaching about different kinds of families, but it's kind of lightly done. But that's a book that I wanted to just mention because folks had mentioned foster care families. But I think, unfortunately, I should probably duck off because I have a Zoom link for this. But thank you so much to everyone who cares about this topic. I think that, I mean, Nicole and Rashad, like I was telling Rashad earlier, like my job is just to find the Rashads and Nicoles of the world and get their books to as many people as possible so that many more publishers follow their lead because they get it. And so thank you for, also being families, and if there are teachers or librarians or anyone else on this call, just being grown-ups who realize the value and the importance of these books, particularly in a pandemic where we can't be with a lot of people. This is a way to bring a lot of rich conversation up about how, differences are beautiful, and also we have so much in common, and we can have fun having these conversations too. But if anyone has further questions, you can always reach out at info@ourshelves.com to me, or I'll be at the sponsor book fair. But thank you again, Katie, and everybody else for being part of this.
Bye, Alli. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alli.
So I wanted to actually piggyback on what Alli said about, or the question that was asked initially of how you can support and really promote these books and make sure that they're getting out there. Something very simple that you can do is just go to your local library and say, hey, can you please put this on your shelves? Can you please get this out here, because I love it. And honestly, I feel like with my own books, somebody requested it, and it's been consistently taken out, and that is huge for me as an author to get noticed, because this is just free traffic that you can get for your book and free support. So that's a very simple way that you can kind of tap into that as well. Let's see. The other question was, do you have a resource with statistics like that there are no two mom-led families, that there are no two mom-led families by major publishers? Ooh, I don't have any particular resources about that. Do you have anything, Nicole or Katie, or anything? Any kind of infographics or resources like that?
I don't.
So, I mean, oh, sorry, did you say you had something, Katie?
I don't have any information about that, but bookshop.org is a really great resource with a lot of people curating book lists on there, small affiliate organizations and small bookshops, and that does support both authors and the indie book publishing industry. So I suggest looking on there as well. And Philly Family Pride, it has a curated list on there as well.
Oh, that's perfect. So the next question was, let's see, which publisher is the best for diverse children's books? Pink Butterfly Press. But I do know that also beyond Nicole's amazing publishing press, Kokila Books it's a subset of Penguin Books. They focus specifically on diverse children's books, diverse young adult literature. So they're a great resource, and I'll go ahead and copy that link in here. And then there's also weneeddiversebooks.com, and they cover books across the spectrum of identities, LGBT, racial identities, ethnic identities, differently abled identities. So I think they're another great resource. So it's weneeddiversebooks.com or .org. I apologize. So I'll put that in the chat as well, or diversebooks.org. But those, Lee and Low as well. There are a lot. Now that I talk about it, there are a lot of resources. So Lee and Low Books, multicultural children's book publisher, they also have excellent resources and an excellent list. So I just put those both in the chat. So those are the three major ones that I know of. But a lot of publishers are really trying to tap into the need for really diverse, again, across the spectrum, books that speak to all of our realities. And then, does anybody else have any questions? Oh. All good, all good. So it's 12:04 now, so I think we're about to wrap up. Oh, I didn't put it into the chat. Sorry about that. So we're about to wrap up, but I'm going to put my link to my website in the link as well. And Nicole, if you wouldn't mind sharing yours. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. This was incredible. I had an incredible time chatting with you, and thank you for your really amazing questions. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so honored. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Philly Family Pride. This was amazing.